What's going on, guys? Welcome to another episode with Phrankleen. This is actually my first upload in the brand new year 2023. If you're watching me for the first time, happy new year to you. If you're watching me as a repeat viewer or subscriber, happy new year to you, and I wish you well in this brand new year. Hope you achieve everything on your to-do list, everything work out for you, blessings and no ramifications. So this story, right, it's a very serious one. So it was one of my viewers that sent me the video link. I watched. It talks about trauma and how this is a big thing in the Black community, and it's been suppressed, and some of the things we call culture, and that are in fact toxic, that affect us adversely, that need to be addressed. Okay, so that's the premise of this video. So there was a very short video clip that you're going to watch in a moment, and please be patient with me. Watch this video.
I've been crying since I woke up this morning. I'm sorry, I need a minute. Okay, so I woke up this morning to a very heated argument with my African Nigerian mother about the trauma that she put me through. About the trauma that she and my dad put me through. How they used to beat the shit out of me as kids. I'm so traumatized. They treated me like an adult when I was a child. I took care of my siblings. I took them to school. I bathed them. I raised my siblings as of like 10 years old. Because as of 9 years old, I was back home. I was taking them to school. I was feeding them. And now I was trying to tell her the things that she did to me and how she ruined my life. And how I can't have a regular relationship with anybody because my trauma keeps popping up in there and I keep projecting it on them. And I was trying to talk to her today because she did the same thing to my sister. And I told my mother, I said, Mom, the way you're going about this thing, you're gonna lose this girl. She's gonna leave the house, and the same shit she did to me when I left home at 17, you're gonna do it to this girl. And she was like, well, if I didn't do that to you when you were a child, are you gonna be the way you are right now? I was like, Mom, are you serious right now? You traumatized me. My dad used to beat me. Like, he wouldn't stop beating me until there was blood on my body. Like, until he saw that I was bleeding. And now she wants me to call him and talk to him and kiki with him. And I'm telling her it can't be possible. And she's asking me to forgive. I have forgiven, but I would never forget because you've hurt me.
Trauma is a lasting emotional response that emanates from, emotional or distressing events or series of distressing events. And trauma is something that's really damaging from an emotional and mental health, point of view. Now, with reference to this woman's video, right? I said it earlier at the start of this video. It's prevalent in the Black community. Look at this girl, this lady. She basically claimed that as a 10-year-old, 10-year-old, a child, she was forced by her parents to raise her siblings. Now, let me address that very quickly. I'm an African, as you can tell. I'm pro-African. I love us. But I am that guy that's not afraid to address the difficult topics, okay? A lot of our people are neck deep in sentiments, blinded by religiosity, fake patriotism, and all this nonsensical mental states whereby they feel certain topics should not be discussed or suppressed, and they will come guns blazing and they'll be verbally aggressive and abusive and all that. But it's not going to take away from the truth, from the real problems that's affecting us as Africans, okay? Now, it's very common where even in the continent where you find parents, some parents, they transfer parental adult responsibility to maybe the first child, and this child themselves still got their mother's breast milk desperately wet on their lips. This is a child. So that in itself is blatantly child abuse. If you are transferring adult responsibilities to a child, a 10-year-old child, forcing them to raise their siblings, there can never be a justifiable, reason for such really mean and totally evil treatment that you subjected that child or children to. So, and that's the situation that this lady went through. I don't know who she is, but I watched this video and a series of other content from her. It's heartbreaking. It's heart gripping, and I know this because I've come across plenty of stories, and also. You can notice what she said about her mother's attitude. Oh, if I didn't raise you that way, you wouldn't turn out. The lady's literally crying for help. There's a borderline mental breakdown. But these people, some of these African parents, they're very selfish. They're self-centered. They're utterly insensitive. Okay, they install themselves on this sort of pedestal whereby they think they are perfect. They are the epitome of knowledge. Absolutely every decision they make or they get involved with is perfect. And this is why, for those who have been watching Phrankleen for a minute, I keep on banging on about some of the major problems we have in the Black community, which is a lot of people that grew up in Africa. I'm a Nigerian by roots. You are robbed of critical thinking. And what do I mean by that? From a tender age, they rob you of critical thinking, which involves challenging the thought process and actions of adults, okay? Calling them out. It's you get a blanket labeling of you're being arrogant, you're being disrespectful. Oh, you'll be cursed to death. How dare you? Oh, your children would do the same thing to you. You're so disrespectful. Oh, this and this. And they will slap it. On top of all that, they will slap it with religiosity. They will go into their religious books and find even much more traumatizing so-called scriptures and points of references, all because they desperately want to silence you. They want to get away with their truckload of atrocities. And this is how so many people grew up. Even in adult life, that's why you get a lot of clash within the Black community. All you have to do is go on social media. And if somebody posts something like this, you see a truckload of damaged people in our community, in our society, desperately defending these devious actions because that's all they know. And I always say you're a product of your environment. They would defend to the death of them, straight toxicity, evilness, abuse. There can never be a justifiable reason for any adult to subject a child into a situation whereby they have to adopt parental or adult set of responsibility to raise their, their siblings. She talked about how her father had to flog her severally until she bled and saw her own blood and stuff. Now, we talk about these things. People, in fact, as Africans, we like to beat our chest. And this is why I keep using terms we love to normalize abuse. Now, please, with all due respect, because those people with limited vocabulary as well as inability to process basic information and be able to indulge in proper analysis of what I'm saying, they'll be the first to jump in the front of the queue and start saying stuff about, oh, you're westernized. This has nothing to do with to do with being westernized. If you don't know me, I went through some of the part of the culture growing up, African culture or treatments that when I was a child too, that you would regard as being toxic and stuff. And I, as well as my wife, I made a personal vow that I will exist outside the box of conformity and societal conformity, excuse me, and I would do better by my own children. I would do better in terms of my interaction with the wider society. I would do better, particularly in how I raise my children. And it's not my desire as a father to end up inflicting. Yes, discipline is crucial, but where do you draw the line? Whereby, in the name of hiding behind that word discipline, right, you inflict your children with trauma that they then carry through the rest of their lives. Now, out of these trauma with reference to this lady's suffering, this is where mental health, lifelong mental health issues are born. And I got news for you. Some of you already know this. In the Black community, particularly from like a diasporan point of view, nobody's checking up for us. Nobody's checking us out. Nobody cares about Black lives. Nobody is evaluating the mental health, immeasurable amount of mental health problems, baggages that people are dealing with. In fact, there is this stereotypically generated perception of you as a Black man and or Black woman, whereby you're expected to be a superhuman. So a lot of us, you grew up with these, especially as a man, someone like me, you must, this project this nonsensical image and act like an alpha, all tough and, strong Black man. So we deceive ourselves. Yeah, we internalize trauma. There is no help. There is no psychological help. There is no help to even help, hopefully at least gain some kind of closure. Nothing. No therapy, nothing. These people who have been damaged from childhood, they grow through their formative years, they grow through life. They have this bagload of trauma. Hear what that lady said, that she takes that trauma into multiple relationships and she ends up projecting that trauma on the innocent, partners in those respective relationships. What happens? They end up collapsing. And this is the story for so many people. When people have, truckload of trauma, they haven't gained closure, particularly when they're in close proximity, they keep on seeing the persons behind the trauma. These people, these parents, these guardians, they refuse to listen. They are very arrogant. They are dismissive. They don't care. It's very common in our communities. Yeah, a mother that damaged a child will ask you to even keep quiet. So what? If I didn't subject you to that trauma or trash you the way I did, you wouldn't be here today. Stockholm syndrome. A lot of people grew up loving the people that subjected them to that toxic, trauma. And even, in fact, to add insult to injury, the same people will then gaslight you as you go through life. And then in the later years, they expect you to bombard them with monthly supply of Forex. If you're in the diaspora, if you live in Africa with them, they expect you to fund their lifestyle as they grow old. Because they will even add to your trauma by gaslighting you at every opportunity that they get. They will threaten to curse you. They will tell you that your children will turn their backs on you and all sorts, further subjecting you to much more damaging trauma, and we normalize the suffering. Now, part of the bullet points on the trauma, right? You have behavioral problems, like I say, like that lady said, right? You exude anger, right? Just every tiny little thing triggers people like that. They cannot function properly in the wider context of the society. Now, they experience relationship breakdown. They can't sustain relationship with other people. They blame everybody else, and people may not necessarily understand you. They look at you like you don't lost your goddamn mind. Like, what's going on with you? And people like that, victims of trauma, they end up getting involved in domestic abuse. They may inflict other people with physical abuse because a lot is going on there in a dark place mentally. Remember, those problems are never addressed. And in the worst case scenario, a lot of these traumatized people, they've not gained closure. Their mental health worsens over time. They end up taking their lives, their own lives. And some of them end up taking the lives of other people. You might be in a relationship with certain persons. Yeah, I've said this before. And, they're very violent and all that. This is not to justify domestic abuse. I would never justify it. But if you trace it back, some of these people, and perpetrators of domestic violence, and you look into their background very closely, a lot of them are victims of cycles of abuse that lasted many years from childhood, even from their own parents. Fact, never addressed, and they grow up into adulthood, and then they just want to marry, they want to date people, and they can't handle the day-to-day interaction. They don't have management skills. They can't deal with even the tiniest disagreement, and they explode, and the only thing they know is to apply violence because they've been subjected to that for donkey years. And unfortunately, they will get arrested. The law will come down heavy on people like that. The society will become judgmental. You point finger at them. Some of them end up taking their own life, or they end up incarcerated. They spend many years behind bars. They are ostracized. Nobody wants to listen, because the truth is the world doesn't care. But these are deeply rooted problems affecting us because we don't address mental health issues. In fact, in our society, if you tell people that someone is going through depression, they'll tell you that you're soft. It's prevalent in the Nigerian community. Oh, if you want to, there's prevalent insensitivity in our society. The other day, I digress. I remember about some months ago, I was in Nigeria, and this woman was going into a grocery store. I was in the grocery store. She came in, and I was buying stuff. I had stuff in the trolley, and you can clearly see that the child, the young teenager that she was grappling with was, her son, but he's autistic. He wasn't violent or anything, but you can tell. And there were people, some women adjacent to me, and they had nasty remarks, nasty comments. They were sniggering, chuckling. And boy, I was enraged. The lack of sympathy. They just look down on you. There is no empathy. Some of them, why they behave like that? Lack of education. They don't understand, and they make mockery of you. They think they're better than you because you're raising an autistic child, or the child with learning difficulty and things like that. So the same thing with these people with trauma. Society becomes judgmental because there is no empathy. They don't have a clue. They just label you. You get ostracized. And on a final note, one of the things, my pet peeve, because I'm not a religious person, I'm a spiritual person, I'm a practitioner of Ifa, I'm an Ifa initiate, and religiosity has done far more damage in our society. People are not willing to admit. A lot of black folks, they are in denial, because what they really use religion for in our society is it's a control mechanism. It's used to chain people's minds and brain. It's a very, very popular weapon when children are coming up, like I said earlier, when it comes to robbing you of critical reasoning, critical thinking. If you dare to try to, speak up and say, why is this way? Why are you doing this and stuff? They will quickly make reference to their religious books and come out, with a truckload of nonsense to silence you. You're inflicted without fear. Right from a tender age, that if you talk back, this is going to happen to you. You get words like, oh, you'll be destroyed, you'll be demolished, or your life is not going to end well. Just because you ask your dad that, Dad, because I didn't close my eyes for prayer at the table because you're blessing the food, or why did I get slapped after you said your prayer? Oh, because, for even daring to say, Dad, why did you slap my younger brother? Oh, Dad, why do I have to do this? Why is mommy doing this, right? They instantaneously label you, right, as you're being disrespectful. You're squaring up to so-called authority above you. They will shut you down. Everybody, uncles, auntie, cousins, everybody will work against you. They will close ranks. They will suppress you. And you know what? I always say something. You cannot give what you don't have. A lot of the so-called parents that gave birth to so many of us within the black community, they are also victims of trauma. You hear some of this older generation. There was a woman who was talking to me a while back, and my lower jaw was literally on the ground, because I was astounded by her submissions, because she talked about, but our kitty, when we're youngins, and stuff. If my dad walks in and, his food wasn't ready, our mom was going to get it. There's no way of escaping, and it's our fault because the food wasn't made on time. Once dad gets in, and dad was a military man, and if his food wasn't on the table, mom was going to get it. By get it meant they grew up watching their mother being subjected to domestic abuse. And trust me, this is a woman who is now like in her late 50s. She wasn't talking about with empathy for her mom or like, oh, my dad was an abuser. No. They believe that, this. So what do you think? She would, everything she's dealing with in terms of dealing with her children, she would respond with violence. And it's a question of, so what? I'm raising you. It's got to be violence. A lot of them, these people that are so religious and stuff, some of them would never even sit down to have a very simple conversation regarding puberty with their young teenage daughter or young teenage son. Mom, my breast is growing. Oh, I'm starting to see menstruation. To even educate them, give them sex education, they would never do that. They would never do that because they're blinded by religiosity. But they would rather subject their children to trauma. What do you think? I think we can do better. We can do better. As far as I'm concerned, when I look at the older generation, a lot of them are lost. It's too late. They are formed. They're set in their toxic ways. I say that without regret. But the younger ones, what can we do better? How can we stop this toxic cycle? Be better. Be better. You can be firm. You can be a disciplinarian. But how do we stop the cycle of inflicting ourselves with trauma in the Black community? Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. What do you think? Let's keep the conversation going on in the comment section below, and I'll catch you in the very next one. Peace and love. Bye-bye now.